Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to talk to you about pattern reading. Have you ever just been really confused and overwhelmed by trying to read a crochet pattern? You are not alone. I did when I first started crocheting myself. Well, let me help you turn those complicated instructions into something fun and easy. By the end of this video, you'll have the confidence to start your next crochet project by reading a pattern with ease. Now, crochet patterns, they come in two different type of formats. You have your written instructions, and then you have your symbol charts. Written instructions, they use the abbreviations and shorthand like DC for double crochet or CH for chain stitches. They certainly can look daunting at first, but I'll break it down for you step by step. As you can see on the screen here, I've got a few common abbreviations. Some of them are like BEG, that's beginning. You've got your SC, that's for single crochet, or I think it's DB or DC, it's DC for double crochet. You've got TR for treble crochet. You've got CH for chain. SK is skip. ST is stitch. So those are just some of the common things. Now I wanted to mention that there's usually at the very beginning of every single pattern. Well, okay, I can't say every single pattern, but most every single pattern at the very beginning of the book, it will have what is very similar to what I've got here on the screen, where it shows you the abbreviations that they use. It will always have a gauge. Well, not always, but they generally will tell you what your gauge is that you need, what kind of yarn that you need, the hook that you're going to need, that kind of stuff. So that is the abbreviations for a written chart. Next up, we see our symbol chart. Now, the symbol chart up here is probably the more complicated symbols. I wasn't able to get a good picture of the most common ones. I'm so sorry about that. But generally, your most common symbols are like a oval for a chain, an X for a single crochet, and then there's the line, the up and down line with a teeny tiny, it kind of looks like a T with a little chicka. For better of a lack of a better word, it's a chicka. Okay. All right. So symbol charts usually visualize the representation of stitches, so showing their placement and relationships. They're fantastic for complex designs, like if you have a lace design or medallions. And then, like for myself, sometimes I get stuck on a written pattern. I like to go to the chart so that I can see, or the diagram, so I can kind of get a visualization of where that stitch is supposed to go, and how I should be placing it. Now, let's go back to the written pattern. This is one of the most common forms. A lot of times people will do a written pattern, but they will not do a visualization because not everybody's an artist. So there's that. But your patterns, they often will use brackets or parentheses to group instructions. So you see in my example here that I have a grouping in the parentheses. That usually will tell you that you need to do those particular items together. Oftentimes, like if it'll say something like DC and the next DC or chain 2, and maybe they'll say to do that in the same space. And then my next example, you're seeing the asterisks. Very similar, but asterisks usually are used to say repeat a particular pattern. So it might say you need to do, like in this example, you need to do DC in each DC across, next chain space chain 2. So then you're going to be doing a DC and next DC chain 2 across to next DC group. So you want to keep in mind that you're going to be going all the way through all of that until you get to the second asterisk. And then you're going to be going back to that first asterisk and repeating all of that again. That way they're not having to write the instructions out again and again and again. That can be monotonous. It might be easier for pattern reading, possibly, potentially, but it does take up a lot more space to write it that way too. And then my final example is the daggers. They also serve as a repeat. So in the example that I have here, so there's actually two different type of daggers that I see. So the one is just, okay, you're going to repeat from dagger to dagger. Okay. And then you've got one where there's a double dagger. So you want to repeat everything again from the double dagger to the double dagger. Does that make sense? All right, so now let's go skipping ahead to foundation rows. We want to kind of just briefly talk about that. I've already talked about how to create a foundation row. Now, when you're reading a pattern, you're actually going to refer back to the pattern itself. They're going to say something like, the stitch pattern might say something like a multiple 8 plus 2. So this means that you'll need to chain enough for 4 pattern repeats plus 2 extra stitches. So you would actually calculate that by taking 8 times 4, which equals 32. And then if you add the 2 like it says, then you're going to need to chain 34. That's what that means at the very beginning of your foundation row. So this is such an important part of your pattern. If you don't do this right, you're going to go through the entire, say, maybe you have to chain 255 or something like that. And you get to the end and you're like, wait, what? I have extra stitches. Or I get to the end and you're like, I don't have enough. Oh my God. That's crazy, right? So we want to make sure that you're calculating that correctly to make sure that your foundation chains are correct and that you're stitching the right amount of chains. All right, so we've covered everything for the most part, the basics of the written pattern. Now let's discuss a diagram. So a diagram is just the visual part. Now I wanted to share this visual with you because we're actually going to be working on this a little bit later. As you can see, there are circles and there's V's and there's X's. In this particular pattern, those ovals, they represent a chain. And most of your written or most of your diagram patterns are going to have ovals as a chain and an X as a single crochet. Now, in this particular pattern, you see that you have a V with 2 X's at the tops of the V's. That indicates that you're going to be doing 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So that's 2 single crochets in the same stitch. And then at the end of the row, you'll see that there's another circle. That means that there's going to, or an oval. That means there's going to be a chain. And you'll see that each row is a little bit different color. So you've got your foundation row, which is a black color. And then the first row is a green color. The second row is like a burgundy brownish color. And the third row is a green color again. So that's kind of an indication that those are a different row and you're going to be doing something different. Now, not all patterns are like that or diagrams are like that. So some of them actually will just be all the same color. So you have to pay attention to how they are represented. Now, some of your diagrams are a little more complicated and you really have to pay attention to what is what, especially when you're working in the round. Those are the ones that are the most complicated to me. And I actually prefer to have a written pattern as well as the diagram so that I can confer to both of them. I think that's pretty much everything that covers. I mean, the diagram is pretty much self-explanatory. It's a picture with your stitches on it. But quite often I see that your Russian patterns, they're the ones that mostly use diagrams. Moving right along, let's get into our next thing, which is gauge. Now, I briefly talked about this at the very beginning where your patterns will have, well, most of your patterns will have at the very beginning of the pattern or the beginning of the book what a finish size is going to be, the materials that you're going to use, and then the gauge that you're going to need to create. So, the gauge can make or break a project. It's the difference between, creating a treasured heirloom and something that just doesn't quite fit. If you created a beautiful sweater, but it's 10 times too big, or maybe it's really, really snug or fit for a Barbie, that can happen. So that's why it's important to make a gauge swatch. So most of the time you want to use a gauge swatch that is 20 rows by 20 stitches. That's usually a good starting point. And then if your gauge is not according to the instructions, then you'll want to make sure that you are either changing your hook, changing your tension until your stitches match the pattern's gauge. Am I guilty of not doing this? Yes. Yes, I am. I am. But I've also been crocheting for 20 plus years, so I know that my gauge is almost always perfect. Now, every once in a while, is it bad? Yes. And do I have to start over again? Yes, yes, I do. But I wouldn't recommend following in my footsteps in that regard. Now, if you notice that I did give you a couple of examples here, and I'm going to go over at least one of those, okay? The example that I have chosen to work through with you is a filet crochet gauge. So on this particular gauge, you want to make sure that your a square, 6 squares by 6 squares equals at least 2 inches, okay? And you'll see on the grid that I have included, uh, a 6 squares is basically the 6 open or 6 closed squares together. So you'll do a 6 by 6 grid, and that should equal 2 inches. So you would get your tape measure out, measure it both ways, 2 inches by 2 inches, and check to make sure that your gauge is correct. If it is, you're good to go. If not, you'll need to make those adjustments accordingly. So we've basically kind of gone through a written pattern, a diagram, and reading patterns. I know it feels like you're unlocking a secret code, but once you get the hang of it, it opens up a whole new world of products. Diagrams. What would we be without them, without being able to refer to them? It does definitely seem intimidating, um, but eventually you'll get it. You see that my roses here, this is a great example. Probably actually one of the first things I learned how to crochet was roses, but I learned how to do so from a pattern. Actually, it was a pattern, a pinwheel pattern. I will actually show you a picture of it. That is the finished product that I created, and I read it all on a pattern. Um, Obviously, the roses were green and not purple. The purple ones are actually one that I'm working on for a bedspread for a niece of mine, but I digress. All right, so when I first started, I did feel overwhelmed, but practice does make perfect. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to start working with you on a pattern. We're going to read it from the beginning to the end. It's actually a pretty simple pattern, but we'll get into that in the next segment. All right, welcome back. You've made it this far. You haven't scared you away, so that's good. Now, pattern making is so crucial. When you get the point where you can read a pattern, you can do just about anything. So what we're going to be working on now is that I'm going to show you how to put those skills in practice. We're going to do a simple, friendly, beginner-friendly pattern. This will help you see how to interpret the abbreviations and symbols in action. I've chosen a pattern that includes basic stitches like chains and single crochets. I don't believe this particular pattern has any double crochets, but let's just go over those real quick. So the abbreviations are single crochet, or SC means single crochet, SK means skip, ST is stitch, skip, TCH is the turning chain, and we're not going to go over this one. The HDC, which is the half double crochet, DC is the double crochet, and TR stands for treble crochet, but we won't be using those particular stitches in this pattern. So go ahead and follow along with me. We're just going to start out with we're going to start with telling you what yarn I'm using. It's just some random leftovers that I found in my pile. It is a worsted weight. I do know that. A medium. I don't know what color it is. I just know it's like a dusky blue. It feels like Red Heart brand, but I don't have the label anymore. So we're possibly going to need our scissors, possibly going to need our darning needle. For sure, you're going to need a H hook. So that's what I'm going to be using. Let's get started. So the instructions say to chain a multiple of 2 stitches. So I think we're just going to do 12 stitches, okay? Hopefully that'll be enough where you guys can see the actual pattern itself. So I just did a slip knot, and we're going to crochet those 12 chains. This is the beginning of our foundation row. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, so the pattern says on chain row 1 we're going to turn, but obviously we're not going to be turning because we're still working on our foundation row. We're going to chain 1. So we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip the first chain, the turning chain, so that it would be this one. And then we are skipping the first stitch, which is this one. And then we're going to do 2 single crochets in the next. And you see that we have a asterisk, so we want to go from asterisk to asterisk. So going back to the asterisk, we're going to go skip 1 stitch and then 2 single crochets in the next stitch. Now we do that all the way across. So we skip 1, 2 single crochets. Skip 1, 2 single crochets. Ooh. I always find the single crochet foundation row to be, well, the single crochet in the chain foundation is like fiddly. It's always been fiddly to me. So, all right, we're skipping 1, and then we're doing 2 single crochets in the next stitch. And then we are ending with 2 single crochets in the last stitch. So, yay, we got the perfect timing. All right. Very simple. All right, so we're going to repeat round 1. So we basically repeat round 1 until we get the height of the project that we want. So we'll go back to that, and it says turn, chain 1. We're going to skip that chain 1 turning chain, and then we're going to skip 1 stitch, and then we're going to single crochet in the next one, 2 single crochets. Skip that one. We'll do 2 in this one. Skip that one, 2 in this one. Skip that one, 2 in this one. Skip that one, 2 in this one. Skip this one, 2 in that one. All right, so we made it down to the end of the row, the second row. So let's just do a couple more rows here. I'm gonna throw my ball on the ground because it's driving me bonkers. All right, so let's count these real quick. So we should have 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we do. All right. So we're gonna turn, chain 1, skip first stitch, go into the next one, single crochet 2 times. Skip 1, 2 single crochets. 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 Skip 1 and 2 single crochets in that last row. Let's take a little bit closer look. It kind of is creating a little bit of a pattern. Kind of a cool pattern. You see that? That's just kind of a neat little pattern. So this is called the grit stitch family. Let's back up. Let's just do a couple more rows. We're going to turn, chain 1, skip that first stitch, go into the next stitch, 2 single crochets on that. Skip 1, 2 single crochets. Skip 1, 2 single crochets. Skip 1, 2 single crochets. Haha, I almost forgot that second one. Skip 1, 2 single crochets. Skip 1, 2 single crochets. Now, don't forget to count 2. We want to make sure that we still have 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, we still have 12. That's excellent. All right, let's do one more. Oh, that's right. We got to turn first. Then we're going to chain, then do 2 single crochets in that second one. Skip 1, 2 single crochets. 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 Now, if you wanted to, do some more practice, I would just do a little coaster. Maybe do a 20 by 20. Do like a gauge swatch, and that would make a perfect little coaster. A little bit different than just doing a single crochet. All right, there we go. All right, so we're going to stop there for now. If you want to, just keep on going until you make the size that you want. Then you're going to finish off by clipping that one end and weaving in your ends. Don't forget to weave in your ends. Make sure you do it nice and secure, just the way that I've taught you. If you don't remember exactly, you'll need to refer to one of my previous videos so that you can refresh your memory, or if you've never learned how to do it before. All right, so would you say that that was fairly simple? It did take me a little while to start learning how to read patterns. Had to to practice quite a bit, but learning to read patterns, you know, that's the first step to crocheting anything that you could possibly dream of. You're already one step closer to mastering crochet patterns. So in the next video, lucky you, I'm going to do another video, and this time I'm actually going to be showing you how to use your skills to fillet crochet. It's very beautiful, very versatile technique. It's actually one of my favorite techniques. I learned how to crochet by doing fillet crochet, and I might share with you the next video what the book was that I used to learn how to do it. So anyway, I do hope that this video has made patterns feel a little less intimidating for you. If you want me to do a little more in-depth, maybe do a couple more pattern readings, I can certainly do that. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next video on fillet crochet. If you have any questions or want to share what you're excited to crochet next, drop a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, bye-bye.